What's going on, guys? It's your boy Beats Bash coming at you with another banger video, and today I'm here with my brother live in person for the first time.
Yeah.
So in this video, I'm gonna do something a little bit different. We're gonna play a little bit of a game where I'm gonna go through the leaders that we have from set 1 so far, as well as the starter deck film edition, so everything before set 2. And my brother, he has some previous knowledge of Magic as well as Hearthstone, so card games in general. And we did play one match at the beginning when the game first came out, where he played Kaido and I played some kind of blue deck or something super simple. So he has a little bit of limited knowledge about the game.
Yeah, a little bit.
And we're just gonna kind of see like how many he can get correct. Like if he thinks it's a meta leader, if he thinks it's, you know, like pretty good, like you could win, or if he just thinks it's like, you know, really bad, like you shouldn't play it.
Right.
And we'll just see how many he gets. Let's get right into it. Okay, so to give some context on this card, before the game actually came out, there was some type of like a tournament you could enter, or maybe you just like were at the tournament store and you got a promo deck, and this was actually like the only leader that was in that deck. I think you got to play against other people for prizes. Not too sure about like all the details on that, but I'm pretty sure you played other people. So a lot of people like got used to playing this leader before the game came out, and then once like the booster set came out, this was actually in the booster set as well. Because it's, you know, 2 colors, you get 4 life instead of 5, but you get to use both red and green cards.
Yeah, that's the first thing. It's 2 colors, so that's got to help it. So what's our rating system here? Is this going to be like high, low, mid, meta?
Yeah, like, do you think this is like a meta card? Do you think this is like a card that like could be used? Like, could you win a tournament with it? You know, like, could you win a locals? Or is it just like completely bad? Or is it like, you know, like top tier meta?
Yeah.
You know, like, what do you actually think about it? More, instead of just saying like good or bad, like, what do you think is good about it? Like,
Gotcha.
could this be good? Like, explain your reasoning.
Gotcha. Okay, so looks like once per turn on your main phase, you pay 4 Dawn.
Yep.
You set a card within your types that's 5 or less,
As active.
and you gain 1,000.
That card gains 1,000. So you untap so you untap something that fits that typing criteria, and then you could reattack with it again essentially, and it also gains 1,000 power during that turn.
I would say that's like mid. That's like you can play it, but it's probably not top tier. And that's because just from when we were playing, there's way better cards out there. This, well, actually, it doesn't even say. Does it come from your hand?
The card?
Yes.
No, it's just, you have something on the field. So let's say you attack with something and then it gets tapped. It turns sideways. Then you use this ability, you untap it. Now it has an additional 1k power and you can attack with it again.
Okay.
And there's also some effects, you know, that activate on attack. So like sometimes you could additionally trigger that. Or you could just attack with something and untap it and then not attack with it again. That way the other guy can't like, you know, do some stuff.
Okay. I would say that hurts it a lot, at least in my opinion. I would still say mid-range as far as meta. Like, it's useful, but it's not the latest and greatest.
Okay. That's actually a very good indication, because to be honest, this card is very mid. It's not really used by anyone in the top tables by any means, but because, you know, it's Monkey D. Luffy and like Straw has Supernova is like a really like powerful keyword. It is like okay. But it's also for life, you know? And
right.
You got to think, we have a limited card pool. So in order for something that's for life to be viable, it has to be really good, because you're compensating for that. And You know, one thing...
It'd have to be a win condition.
Yeah. Yeah, so one thing I want to mention to you is that, like, the reason why 4 life is so much less powerful than 5 is not necessarily just because you can take 1 less hit, but also because you're getting 1 less card throughout the game than the other guy is. So those are added to your hand, and as well, 4 is a pretty steep cost.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Because you need to essentially untap something that is 5 to get the most value out of it, because most of the lower cost units, they're not going to be as powerful, but overall not the best, to be honest with you. So, I mean, that was a pretty good guess.
Had a little bit of an advantage because we played with some probably top tier cards, at least for the time.
I mean, you just played with the purple Kaido deck, and I played with blue Crocodile or something, which...
Don't tell me.
I'm just saying, you didn't really, like, touch that much deep into the game.
Oh, yeah.
So for you to make that indication is actually kind of crazy. That just tells me you can understand. I should have showed you the alt art, so you should have gotten, like, a fake indication.
Yeah.
Now, since we touched Red-Green Luffy, I'm going to talk about the only other Red-Green leader in this set.
Oh, now you're going to do the alt art. Okay.
Yeah, now I'm going to do the alt art. There's not too many leaders. I think there's about, like, 15. And there's not many leaders that are 2 colors at all in general. This is one of, I think, like 4 multicolored leaders that were introduced in this set. And this ability says active main once per turn. You can tap 2 Dawn. If you have a total of 5 characters on the board, then you can return up to 1 character with a cost of 5 or less to hand that is red or green, which are the only cards in your deck. And then you can play another one of the opposite type if you choose to do so.
Yeah.
So there's 2 things to think about this card. Number 1, if you bounce back a green card to your hand by paying 2, you could play something out that is red that maybe costed more than that card. So you could get a Dawn advantage because you can play a card up to 5.
Right.
But you can also just return something back to hand and then not replay something. In case, so you don't necessarily have to have a target. Maybe you have like an additional, like you have an on-play effect you want to save, or you want to get like some counter power in hand or something. You know, there's a couple different ways to use this ability. I'm just kind of explaining that because it's kind of complicated when you first think about it.
Yeah, no, I got you. I was mainly thinking you switch, you know, you're kind of switching in and out.
And if you don't know, this guy is a fan favorite. Trafalgar Law is like a part of this thing called the Worst Generation, which is kind of like the new era pirates after like Whitebeard and all the old people. The same way as Luffy.
Gotcha. Okay, so 4 life again, which you said that's, you know, somewhat of a disadvantage. 2 colors is good though. 2 Dawn for activate cost. Let's see. The thing that gets me, though, is having 5 characters all out.
Mm-hmm.
And that knocks it out of top tier right there for me. The ability's good and all, but you have to have 5 characters on the field.
Yeah, and there's a maximum of 5 characters you can have in play at one time.
Yeah. I'd say this guy is mid to low. I always think, there's great abilities in even other card games whenever you have an established field. But if someone's running control on you, you never even get to that point to use cool abilities. Like, it's a cool ability to be able to kind of sub in and out people from your hand. But you know, if you have 5 people out, the chances you have 5 any other cards in your hand to cycle in and out is kind of rare. Chances you're getting a full board of 5 people while an opponent just sits there is kind of rare. I'm going to say low. I'll just go all the way down.
That is actually incorrect. This is actually considered by a lot of people the best leader in the game.
Okay. Fast-paced game like One Piece seems like it would be a rarity to get.
Can I get a W in the chat? We got him, boys. Chop one up for the Surgeon of Death, Trafalgar Law. So the reason why this leader is quite a bit more viable than the other 4-life leader I showed you previously is because I mentioned that when you have 4-life, you have to get over that threshold of being down a card to your opponent, and red and green actually have these cards called searchers. So there's one in red, which is Nami, and it's a 1-cost card that says on play, look at the top 5 cards of your deck, and you may add a Straw Hat Crew card from those top 5 to your hand, then the rest go on the bottom. So that's really good with this effect because you can essentially return that back to your hand with this ability and then replay it, and then you're essentially drawing a card because most of your deck is Straw Hat Crew.
Okay.
If you see on the card, Law himself is a supernova, which green is like the supernova type and red is like the straw hat. And so it just allows you to have a lot of cards that search. And so you can do stuff like return your Nami back to hand, replay it. Since you drew a card off of that ability, well, now you're kind of bypassing that negative advantage of only having 4 life because I got another card.
Okay.
And you could do that every turn. You know, like you could set it up to where maybe you return a searcher back to your hand, you replay it, you get the card advantage, then you return it back to your hand before ending your turn so the other guy can't kill it. So then you're just getting infinite advantage.
Yeah, but what about the disadvantage of having to play a full board before? Does that make him mid or high? Where are we going with this?
It's really because of this set, we have a limited card pool. There's not as much removal for low-cost units,
Okay.
you know, just because we have the base set and the starter deck.
Okay.
So
how many Trafalgar players have you beat?
Have I beat one of my best friends, Ortiz? That's like the only deck he plays, and I always clap him.
There we go. Hey, W's in the chat.
Shout out to Ortiz for me clapping him.
He tried to protect your card. I'm still saying it's low. I'm still on the opposition case, but you know, I get it. It's possible. It's possible you get your magic Utopia 5 cards.
So it's actually controversial whether that's the best deck or not because it requires you quite a bit of thinking. Since you're at 4 life, you're just in like a really high risk situation, you know?
Yeah, no, that's why. That's kind of what led me to my decision because I always, any other card game, I would always try to put together a deck where it's like, you think of your ultimate dream hand and all that, and it just falls flat, especially in a game like this where you see each other's leader and you understand, like, they need 5 cards on the board to do this. So, you know, I could see exactly. If you've got a good eye for deck building, you can make it to where that's inevitable, provided you know you luck out on some stuff too. But I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't be able to do it. You know,
So that's kind of the consensus in the community.
I'm the Boomer Baron.
Even though some people have said that they think this is like the most powerful deck, it's also one of the most complicated to play. And so like at the Treasure Cup, we've seen it be one of the like lowest represented decks out of any leader. You know, less than like 50, I think, at the last one, even though it's won a few, just because, you know, it gets so close, like you're at 0 life and you got to think like, do I discard this? Like, what do I do here? Because, you know, you're like, okay, well, do I bounce this? What do I play? And then this other card lets me bounce stuff. And it's like, you got to return a red to do a green. Like, because you can't return a red to play a red. So that's where it gets super complicated. And you have 10 Dawn and you don't know how you should be spending it. And it's like, it goes over the head of a lot of people. So like not many people are willing to like take the risk for that because you have to have numerous reps on the deck to like hours to actually be good. And in terms of the Treasure Cup, so some of these have been 1-day events. So like I know in Australia, they had it only in 1 day, I think, or maybe not Australia, but there was a couple of
overseas.
There was a couple overseas where they literally played for 13 hours without like, there was like a lunch break, I guess, and they did it all in 1 day. So they did 9 rounds of Swiss, and that's best of 1, like 30-minute time limit or something around there. And then after that, they go into Top Cut where you do best 2 out of 3.
Oh, okay.
So like, it's actually happened a couple times where the Law player got to the finals and it's like, okay, This guy's just been playing for 13 hours, and he just loses in the finals because the deck's already super complicated. And it turns out after you've been, just going around playing a game that requires like high-level thinking beyond exhaustion, you may not, play out perfectly.
Well, that's the thing. It's like comfort is something to take in
100%.
consideration. It's like anything you do.
Yeah.
It's mentally intensive.
Okay, so since we just did 2 red leaders in a row, let's go ahead and go with the only person you've actually dealt with so far, which is the Purple Kaido. It's the one that you used in our match we played with before.
Yeah. Okay, so 5 life, that's good. 7 done. It's pretty costly, but yeah, the effect, man. Trash the top card of your opponent's life. I'd say this top tier.
Do you remember anything that stood out from our match before? Like with what this kind of like archetype is trying to do, and like the return Dawn effect, because the return Dawn effect is a very unique thing. He's one of 2 leaders who has a return Dawn effect currently in the game, and to me, it very much stood out as a game mechanic that's quite different than any other game, because you can return Dawn that was already previously like attached to a leader, whereas like, let's say you attack with someone, like you attacked with this guy for 7, and you hit the other guy for 12. So it's 12 on 5. He's not going to be able to block it. Then he takes the damage. Okay, now after that's over, I can't use that Dawn to pay for a cost anymore, but I can still use the leader ability to take that away from my leader and use this to burn another life. And that's something very interesting to me about the return Dawn mechanic, because you can do it with tapped Dawn or Dawn that's under someone.
Yeah. That was the thing that made him like. I was skeptical when he first started playing, but it wasn't too difficult to actually get enough to pay the cost or work within the whatever limitations you've got going on. So I would still say top tier.
So this guy is actually considered like the highest power level leader in the game, not necessarily just because of his effect, which is, quite good because it allows you to go for that last damage. But what this like archetype does is so much different than any other card game that is very interesting. Because when you think about it, it's really like the first ramp deck in any game that you're just able to operate without like you have removal and stuff, Whereas like in Hearthstone, when you play Druid, you didn't have removal. You have 10 cost Kaido in this deck, which nukes the board, if you remember that.
Yeah, and just to be forthright, I'm prone to ramp decks. You got to get out the big stuff, so that's a little bit of my bias there is towards ramp decks.
So some of the cards that are in this purple archetype, because there are like, only a couple leaders for each color so far, so this is kind of like, one of the few choices you have to use purple in general. Some of the cards specifically say your leader must be an Animal Kingdom pirate leader, which this guy is. Obviously, people have different types, and so you can't even use the 10 cost Kaido, which is a powerful card on its own, without using a leader that has that typing. So that's kind of part of why this guy is very strong, because the purple cards are powerful in general. The problem is with this guy, it's just, it's a best of 1 game until you get into Top Cut, unless you're just like at a locals. And, you have to draw the Onigashima Island in order to be effective, because that card lets you get an additional Dawn each turn.
Yeah, that's right. I remember now. I was trying to think of what gave me that effect.
So it was kind of like a wild growth, but you get to do that every turn.
Right.
And currently...
Which is insane.
Oh, yeah, it's insane. There's actually just no way to remove a stage from the game.
Yeah.
Which is really broken, because this guy is one of like, I think 2 people who currently have a stage, and the other stage is like not playable in any way. Whereas this guy, it's like, okay, the stage is very crucial to the strategy, and once the guy has it, you just aren't allowed to remove it. And that's just really broken. Especially because his mechanic to return stuff to the Dawn deck with all your cards in general, it's essentially mitigating a cost when you think about it, because the island gives you one that's tapped, So since you were going to return the one that was tapped anyway,
Right.
it's paying for a cost, you know? Now we're going to talk about Crocodile. So Crocodile was the starter deck blue leader.
Okay. So let's see. 4 done to essentially bounce a character back to your opponent's hand.
And that's returned on. It's not tap.
Okay.
This is the other leader I was telling you is the only other leader that has the returned on effect besides Kaido.
Gotcha. Okay, so the circle around it is tap.
The minus symbol is return.
Gotcha. I thought everything returned. All right. So, man, that's pretty powerful. However, he is only a single color, so without knowing the rest of the blue cards from a support standpoint, I would say I'm going between mid to high tier. I'll say mid. Since we don't have any other subcategories, I would have said upper mid, but we'll still go mid for the one color.
So from a strictly objective standpoint, this guy is extremely weak because there's another Crocodile card that in the artwork, that one has a cigar and this Crocodile doesn't, which makes him less of a Giga Chad. But overall, either way, it's kind of not very good, honestly. Some people have seen success with it and they think that, like, you know, the ability is good, but the problem with it is that ability is basically not available to you until you get to probably 10 Dawn, ideally, because if you return 4 Dawn to the Dawn deck and blue has no way to ramp, then you're just at a -4 to the other guy in the early game, so you're not able to hit your big tempo turns like the other guy is if you misuse it.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm 2 for 2. Or I'm 2 out of 2 for 4.
So ideally, this guy, like the main focus of his strategy is like you get to 10 Dawn and then maybe you use the 10 Dawn to play out a couple cards that have high power. Then you return the 4 Dawn after it's tapped to bounce their guy. So you're creating a board as well as removing one of their pieces, which is good in some matchups. But the thing is, it's a rock, paper, scissors type format right now. And that effect is good into some matchups. It's just like, overall, I wouldn't say that it covers all the areas you want it to. And that's probably what makes it weak. But this could potentially be better later on when our card pool increases. It's not as viable right now.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and
that makes sense.
And one thing I'll throw out there is that apparently I didn't play in like the starter deck meta where you just entered these pre-release tournaments and you got a sealed deck and played people. But I guess this was actually the best deck because against green, that ability was just super polarizing and it just allowed you to end the game super fast.
Yeah, well now, would you say this would go up in utility if you killed the character instead of bouncing it to its owner's hand? Would that make any difference at all in this?
I think it would. I think that would be very much better because currently in the game, there are very few cards that allow you to interact with the trash for the most part. If a card is gone, it's gone forever.
Yeah.
My biggest complaint with this card is that it's 5 or less. And I don't know, some people think like it's still good. I've seen people do well with it. I just personally think there are better options. It's just, to me, I think it would be more fair if it said 7 or less to hand. Because 5 is just like...
Yeah, what's the highest power 5 card? I mean, it's
the highest like power...
5,000?
5K for a 7... 5 cost for a 7K power vanilla is currently like the highest stat line you could go.
Okay.
But that's a vanilla with no effect. Or you have, 5K, 6K attack power characters with like blocker and other good effects like the queen and stuff. So it's like, it can be good if they have like a big blocker on board that your removal doesn't cover. But I think like we just need more cards in the game for this to be viable because, you can't afford to take those turns off in the early to mid game. So
and it's one color, so it's a little more limiting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially,
so is it low?
Yeah. It's probably one of the like least popular leaders.
Okay, so yeah, I got Trafalgar wrong and Croc wrong. All right.
Now let's go ahead and talk about Uta.
Okay.
So Uta is actually one of the cards that comes in this participation pack you get at your local game store that came out around the same time as the first set booster, and it's from the newest movie film Red.
Okay.
So the ability reads, for active main once per turn, tap 1, up to 1 character without an effect gains 2k this turn. So you're paying 1 Dawn to give something plus 2k, but it has to have no effect.
Right, it's got to be vanilla. Low. Is a blocker considered an effect card?
It is.
Okay,
I believe so.
I'm like, no, this is low. I can't imagine anything better than that. Single color, yeah, 5 life, but
because there are some cards in the game, because there's certain like power thresholds, some cards that are vanillas, because we have a limited card pool, are actually like very strong in some decks because they fill out points in the curve that your deck doesn't, meet. So like in some decks, the 5 cost 7k is like okay because it has a counter.
Yeah, but still, it's like, this is like as simplistic as you can go. Is if you're going to build a deck around vanilla, giving your vanillas more power, it's like you might do well with it, but I can't imagine people. I can't imagine people not being able to make a combo to get around everything you're doing. You know, if you were playing without, if you were playing against another vanilla deck, this would be great. But everything we've seen thus far has way better effects. So yeah, low. That's my final.
That's completely correct. This card is actually one of the worst leaders in the game, if not currently the worst leader in the game. Just because you can only use that effect once per turn anyway. So it's just like, I'm making my deck at a disadvantage to do nothing just to gain 1 additional power off of paying 1 Dawn. It's like,
well,
I don't even know why they made this.
Let's say you power up the 5 cost 7k thing to 9,000. I use a 2,000 power blocker. So okay, there you go. You know, you don't get. It's not like Yu-Gi-Oh where you get points above and beyond. Because
exactly.
There's no trample, I guess.
And there's also just several other red leaders in the game. I think red has the most leader cards out of any color so far.
Gotcha.
And it's just like, why would you build your entire strategy around getting a 1 Dawn refund? Then you're just taking a huge disadvantage.
I mean, plus it had garbage art. Looked like
did.
Someone was drawing on a cocktail napkin at
it wasn't
2 o'clock in the morning.
Wasn't doing any justice for the movie. That's all I can tell you. Now let's go ahead and compare it to another red leader card here. I'm going to be talking about the starter deck Monkey D. Luffy.
Okay, let's see. 5 life, single color. Give this leader 1 of your characters 1 rested Dawn card. So essentially,
you can get him
the 1,000
or the leader. Yeah,
they get the 1,000, right?
Him or a character.
Okay, it's not bad. I'm gonna say low again. There's almost a case to be made for mid, but since it's a free action essentially, but it's 1,000. It's 1,000 power added to something. I don't see the utility past just basic play. So low.
So I actually would say this is probably the best deck in the game currently.
All right.
Just because, number one, the cards that this guy has access to are very strong. Having 5 life is, very good right now. And a lot of the cards in this deck's archetype, they have an effect that requires a Dawn being attached to them. So it allows you on key turns where you wouldn't be able to do something to push for more. Like there's one Luffy card that says Dawn 2x. So if you have 2 Dawn cards underneath him, he gains an ability. And his ability happens to be that he has Rush. But if he has 2 Dawn under him, then he cannot be blocked.
Okay.
So if you have this and you're 1 Dawn off on that turn where you would be playing that guy, then you're essentially giving him unblockable the turn he's played when you wouldn't be able to normally do so. And that's kind of like the theme of what you're doing. You're getting effects that you wouldn't normally be able to do on that turn.
Gotcha. Okay, so there's some combo potential or something.
Yeah, it's just some added value combined with the overall power level of this leader's card pool. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about our first solo green leader, Kazuki Oden. This guy says, once per turn, you may trash a Land of Wano card, so discard a card, set up to 2 of your Dawns as active, and he's the Wano Country Kazuki family. So he is from like the old days with like Gold D. Roger, essentially.
Gotcha. Okay, so you can trash, Wano Country. Is that a character type, or is that like an effect?
So it's a card type. So there are characters that are Wano Country. There are also events that are Wano Country.
Okay. That's what I was trying to get at. Set up to 2 of your Dawn cards as active.
And you can't do this in the same turn. So like, essentially what I'm saying is, if you have 5 Dawn, you can't just discard a card and go to 7. You would have to use the Dawn and then make it active.
Okay, so it doesn't accumulate.
It doesn't bypass your cap.
Effectively accumulate, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to say mid.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very fair assumption. Essentially, this guy, his ability is actually pretty good, and a lot of people speculate that it will get better as time goes on because we only have 1 set, so there aren't as many Wano Country cards as you might want in this type of deck, but there are quite a few powerful ones that make this playable, as well as just the overall card quality of green is very high. So a lot of people like highly regard this this leader, just for his card quality, and his ability does allow you to do some things that you wouldn't normally be able to do so because some of the powerful cards in your deck, they actually have no counter. So you're able to discard those when you wouldn't be able to use them to defend yourself, and then maybe you put out a blocker or you activate an effect that you couldn't do.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, because that's the kind of sense I get of this is like, later game you'll be able to stack more Dawn together, so
Yeah. So I mean there are also a couple effects.
Bring out something 5 cost, then trash another card. Now you've got a 7 to do something else with. However, by that time, if you've been playing like on curve, you probably don't have a big hand unless there's some kind of draw effect that you've been replenishing your hand. So it's not like you have a lot of options late game.
So you do actually get to replenish your hand quite a bit. This archetype in general and the overall strategy is based around gaining advantage in general. So discarding a card isn't as big of a cost as you would think. It's just that a lot of people would agree that there are currently better options for trying to do what you're doing with this guy, but that doesn't mean he's bad. Like, still what he can do is better in some ways than colors that are using a different card pool than green. Because like I said, it's a rock, paper, scissors
meta. I don't
meta,
know much about
and
green.
Certain colors are good versus other colors. Green, from what I understand, it's kind of hard to explain. I would say the 2 essential themes are you have cards that allow you to tap your opponent's cards on play, and then you also have the ability to gain card advantage, kind of like more control-esque, I would say.
Gotcha. Okay.
But in set 2, which will be releasing next month, we're actually getting quite a few more Wano Country cards that are really powerful. So this guy has a lot of potential going forward. And as well, currently, there is a searcher in the game which says you can tap it every turn to look at the top 5 and add a Wano Country card. And if you're able to protect that or return it back to your hand, you can get infinite advantage, you know?
That's pretty cool, yeah.
So, I mean, it's a pretty cool card. It's just, there are a couple other better options right now, so it doesn't see much play, but I've seen some people do quite well with it.
Gotcha.
Now we're going to discuss the other blue leader in the set, Don Quixote Doflamingo. This is the one that comes out of the booster pack and not the starter deck, contrary to Croc. And his ability says if you have 2 Don under him and you attack, you can tap 1, then reveal the top card of your deck. If it is 7 Warlords of the Sea type and 4 or less, you can play that card tapped. So essentially, if you have to have 3 Dawn to use this ability, so the soonest you could use it is turn 2. You put 2 under him, and then he's attacking for 7 on their leader.
Yeah.
And then you're getting a card from the top of your deck, if you know what it is, into play for free, and you're hitting for 7. And 7 is a very good number in this game. I'm just going to tell you that because whenever you do 7, since there's only 2K and 1K counters, if their guy is 5, like their leader, he has to discard at least 2 cards.
Right, okay.
So that's kind of something important to think about.
Gotcha. I don't know. Seeing this one actually in action, I'd say it's high. There's it's not a high cost, and it makes attacking with your leader a lot safer. Well, actually, there's not quite a drawback. I'll still
well, if you could miss
high. I'll still say high. 'Cause it seems like there's not much point in not attacking with your leader.
That's true. But at the same time, the drawback is if you do, let's say you reveal the top card of your deck and it's not that typing, then you just kind of wasted that 3 Dawn essentially. Not wasted, but like you're like, dang. Because then also the other guy gets to see that card and you didn't get to put it into play. Also, the card you play comes it comes on the field rested, so you can't attack with it that turn, and the other guy can attack it before you have the before you have the chance to attack with it yourself.
Okay, so there's a little bit of setup. I would. Oh man. Okay. Mid, we'll say. Fine.
Yeah. So this card is kind of hard to like categorize because like I've seen a lot of success with it.
Right.
I probably won like 7 or 8 tournaments with it, and there have been quite a few people who have topped in the Treasure Cup, but it has a really low play rate because blue in general just isn't that high power level compared to some of the other colors, and it has a couple cards that allow them to rearrange the top of the deck. So that's kind of the focal strategy. So you have a card that costs 1 that says on play, rearrange the top 5 cards of your deck, which you could stack your deck in a way that if you remember it correctly, you play the top card of your deck with this effect. On the following turn, you know what you're going to draw. It's not a hit. The next one is a hit, and so on. So it gets pretty complicated because you got to account for like, what if I have a card that lets me draw in between those and it messes up the stack? And also, if you don't have a card that allows you to continue the stack, then you're just going in blind. But the biggest reason why this isn't as like busted as it seems in a vacuum is just because of like the rock, paper, scissors pairings right now. It doesn't play well into some of the colors that are more represented. It is good versus some things that, you know, are good in their own right, but some of the more popular options, you have a more difficult time going into, and that's just based on like color matchups so far. But I would say that most people agree this leader is quite a bit more powerful than Crocodile, and in some treasure cups, like there was one previously in Australia where I think there was like 4 out of the top 16 people who were playing this leader, even though there was less than 50 people out of 500 who played it. So I actually had like the highest conversion rate of tops in that tournament, but overall, like, people don't like this leader as much as others.
Yeah.
Man, that might partially be because of like the high thinking. You know, you got to remember.
Well, yeah, that's the other thing. Is like from what you were saying about the Australian Treasure Cup, it was like Squid Game's One Piece tournament, like 19 straight hours of gaming. So.
Yeah, so also, I just want to mention, this guy's ability in the anime is to control people with strings. So in the situation of the Australian Treasure Cup, that was where, like, the top, like, 8 promotional cards were stolen. And I have a feeling one of the Doflamingo players committed an inside job and told one of the judges to, you know, run off with the Zoros.
Yeah, that is so crazy. Like, oh, man. How could, as an organizer, how embarrassing would that be to lose your entire prize pool?
Oh, and I just want to point out that those people aren't getting replacements.
Yeah.
And that's actually just thousands of dollars worth of stuff. Like,
that is crazy.
Yeah.
Check the black market.
No, for real. I'll put the meme up on the board. Now, we're going to talk about one of the only other dual color leaders, which is the Blurple Kaido. So you are sacrificing a life with this one, but you get access to blue and purple, and as well as he is also the only other Animal Kingdom's pirate leader currently in the game. So you can use the 10 cost Kaido, which was exclusive to that criteria.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah. 4 life. Does he have to have 1 Dawn under him?
Yep.
Okay, 1 Dawn under him. One of your opponent's characters KO'd, you may add 1 Dawn card from your Dawn deck and set it as active. Let's see.
So you get to ramp 1. It's an additional Dawn, not like Kazuki Oden.
Yeah, but like, is he the one that has to KO?
No.
So, okay.
But it has to be during your turn. So you have to commit the KO.
Okay. I say this is high. It's kind of on the borderline of high and mid. But with the additional card pairings, I'd say you've got a good chance at activating this.
So it's actually quite bad. A lot of people feel like.
Okay.
We just got access to this thing called the Starter Deck 5 Film Edition, which has Shanks on it, and we'll talk about that in a bit. It adds some new cards that give you a benefit for this archetype. The main problem is, while you do have utility to ramp, the Kaido is a strong leader because his ability inherently allows you to get rid of the surplus of Dawn you've acquired. So if you don't have a payoff with this guy, once you're at 10, you're kind of just like leaking advantage.
That's true, yeah.
And then you got to think, in order to use this ability, you have to put a Dawn on him anyway. So you have to use 1 to gain 1. And I think that's like a little bit irritating, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true. So low, you say? This
Yeah,
okay.
But I will point out that
Right,
that film deck did make it, quite a bit more playable. And at the time of this recording, there was actually a online tournament that had like at least like 50 or 60 people, which was like a 6-round thing. And then all the way through top cut, it's best 2 out of 3. The Blurple Kaido actually made it to the finals of that tournament, which is the first sign of success I've seen with this deck in the set 1 meta, which is really interesting because most people just gave up on this guy because having the 4 life is a huge disadvantage. Also, when you think about the archetype it's in, when you're playing ramp, obviously you have low early game defenses. So then you need to be able to take that damage to get to your big payoffs. So even if you're succeeding at your game plan, then you're just at a risk of dying. And that's what's like hurting it most for me. But I will point out that in set 2, this is actually quite a bit more playable and more of a meta call in the fact that we get a lot of 1-drops that tap themselves in the early game. And that makes this like quite a bit more strong because the meta is kind of like hurting this leader from the fact that like you don't have a lot of ways to inherently trigger this ability in the early game, which is when you would most like to.
Right, yeah, like you're saying, if you go to the end,
so if you go first, And if you go first, you're the first person to attack on turn 2 with 3 Dawn. You put 1 Dawn on this guy. Maybe you put him at 7k, you put 2 on him. And confirm a kill on one of their guys that tapped itself that is like 1k or 2k power. That's awesome, you know, because you just gained a Dawn. But then you get to like turn 3 or 4 and it's like, okay, you're close to like 8 to 10 Dawn and you're like, dang. This ability is almost like
tapped
useless, but you are getting access to blue, which is kind of nice for purple because the early game of purple isn't as strong. So there's definitely some potential with this. And when red gets more tappable aggressive cards in set 2, I think some people will be able to sneak into the game with this as like a meta call in some tournaments.
What's blue? What's like a blue type while you're looking up the next one?
A blue type? What do you mean?
So like a aggro?
Blue, I would say, is about like control, drawing cards. You know, like you know, Doflamingo, it's about like playing the top card of your deck, not necessarily using cards in your hand because you don't have to. You're getting a free guy that's 4 cost. Most of the guys you're summoning off that ability are 4 cost, 5k power. So you're hitting for 7, which the guy has to do 2 cards, and then you get a 5k power character on the board for free. He has to answer that, or else you just getting a free body. So it's like, if you can keep that up, then you're getting a lot of advantage.
Gotcha. Okay.
So blue and purple are like more control based, I would say, than like red. Red is like pretty aggro. I wouldn't say green is like...
Red seems like, or
green is
purple
weird.
Seems like, was there a lot of removal in there? I feel like there was.
I mean,
maybe,
a lot of people...
Maybe no more than usual.
The thing about purple is, you know, the 10 cost Kaido is currently the only card in the game that's an AoE removal.
Okay, yeah.
Like, literally at all, you know? And, while it is costly, it is the only form of removal at all. This is another purple leader. This is actually the one that comes in the booster set and not the starter deck, contrary to the Kaido King. He's a part of the Animal Kingdom Pirates as well, so you can actually use cards like that 10 cost Kaido, as we mentioned before. But one thing that you'll notice about this guy as well as Kaido is you won't be able to meet them for 3 to 4 years because they don't come into play for 1,000 episodes.
Gotcha. It just looks like a character from Pulp Fiction movie to an old man like me. Anyways.
Yeah, it looks similar to that one guy from... what's that one movie with the cube? You know, with the spikes on his head?
Oh, Hellraiser. Yeah.
I kind of see those
it's
vibes.
It's like a chibi Hellraiser character.
True. So during your turn, this is a passive effect. If you have 10 Dawn total, all of your opponent's characters have minus 1k power. While you have 10 Dawn.
Yeah. I'd say... I'll take a gamble here. I'm going to say high.
Why do you think that's high? Like, what do you think is good about that?
So if you can ramp out cards on purple, you can get to 10 Dawn pretty easy. The rest of it, you know... Now, okay, here it is. Does the opponent's leader have negative 1,000? It says character.
It's just character, so no, their leader does not.
Okay. Okay, I'll change my answer to mid then. Because I was like, if you could give your opponent's leader negative 1,000,
that would definitely
you
make
could
it better.
like just hit.
Yeah,
hit.
then you could just go wide, you know?
Yeah.
So actually, this card is probably the worst leader in the game on level with the Uta.
All right, I gotta add that to the. I'm making a list of stable diffusion characters. We're gonna
So the main reason why this guy is so bad is because most of your powerful cards in purple have a return Dawn effect. So as soon as you use that, this ability is no longer active. So it's like, okay, at what time am I going to be able to even have this active? And even if it was just active all the time, like, how good is that really?
Yeah. You know, like if you could shave another 1,000 off there, or you could have a shot, free shot at the leader every turn.
Honestly, if it was minus 2,000, I think that would be completely fair. Like, it still wouldn't even be broken because, like I said, like, all of the good purple cards, 10 cost Kaido makes you return 5 or 6. So
Yeah.
then you have to wait like 3 turns if you don't have the island to even get back to that turn. And that's assuming you don't use a return dawn effect. Because you got to think, since the defenses in purple are low, sometimes you are forced to use a return dawn effect so you don't die, even before you get to 10.
Okay.
So it's just prolonged effect. Like, essentially, this guy is just a vanilla leader, and he's kind of just a meme.
Okay. I'm resistant to go low on anything now.
Like,
it's because it's like there's such a limited base of cards.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's like you assume everything's kind of at least like on the borderline of mid.
I mean, you
even
can
if it is low, it's like it's like they don't usually only get like truly useless cards on games that have like 1,000 cards per set, and they've been out through 10 sets.
Exactly. Yeah, no.
Or a couple hundred per set.
I mean,
I don't think there's any game that has that many, but
I think it's just like also
exaggerating.
Purple is looking to do one thing specifically, and that guy just goes in the opposite direction of what you're doing.
Okay.
And that's just kind of irritating, but I mean, it could be better, in the future.
Yeah.
Let's get rid of the last purple leader here. So this is a guy that I didn't know if I was going to mention. He's not in the set 1, but he did come out before set 2. It's in the most recent thing that we just got, which is the starter deck 5, which was came out like a week or 2 ago, but it's not legal for the Treasure Cup. And it's the film structure deck, so he has the film types. It's Shanks, he's 4 Emperors, and his effect, similarly to Kaido, is a return dawn effect, return 3. Your film type characters gain 2k power during this turn. Kind of just invalidates Uta when you think about it. It's like, wait, why do I just get to buff everyone for 2k when Uta just only buffs for 1? And I'm not even doing a real dawn cost, I'm doing a return dawn cost.
Right.
And they're both films, so they knew what they were doing. They're from the same movie.
Yeah. I don't know.
And he also introduced, the starter deck is all the guys are film in it, by the way.
Oh, okay.
He essentially introduced the film
type.
type.
How many film type characters are
there? Was no film cards in purple until this starter deck. There's none in the base, in the first booster set, I don't believe.
Okay.
Not in purple. I think there were a couple in the other colors, but not purple.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm going to go mid to low. I can't imagine this guy being top tier meta. Just because it's a return dawn effect. You're getting 2,000 power a single turn. And it's a limited archetype that you're saying is pretty much only available through a starter deck.
Okay, but
I'll go low.
I will mention this to you. A lot of the most powerful cards in the game right now are from the starter deck because, it's not like the booster set introduced 1,000 cards. So you got to think the Kaido deck itself. You're using the leader from the starter deck. Half of the cards that are in that deck, and that's a very strong deck, are from that starter deck.
Okay.
It's not like you're getting an insane amount of film cards, but it's enough to build a deck around.
Okay, I'll go, since you're doing the leading the witness, I'll go mid.
There's really no testing done on this card, to be honest. People will kind of just disregard this guy as bad, but I think that there's still some potential to do some things because it's I
can see it being annoying that,
it's definitely better than King and Uta, in my opinion.
Later game,
I could see you doing a lot of things.
Annoying that, all of a sudden, if you've got a bunch of film...
So in the next set, we actually get a couple more film cards, so it might be good then.
Okay.
And
I still, I
the
guess
film,
mid.
The film deck,
it has potential, but there's not you're not blowing anybody away with this thing. You're annoying them.
Yeah, no, 100% I agree with you. I think the main problem with it is the fact that purple isn't currently meant to be able to go wide, and it seems like this effect is kind of pushing you in that direction.
Yeah.
But I still think that the return dawn effect is a really broken mechanic just because it's not even really a cost. It's okay, you can tap it. You can tap your dawn to do something and then you just return to the deck. You already paid a cost. It's wait, why do I get to use my dawn twice? And he gets to use his dawn once. Like,
Gotcha.
I think there's a lot of potential for this card, honestly, and people just haven't played it. Like, obviously, like, it's not top tier, but it's way better than the people at the bottom, and I think you could win a locals with it for sure, especially when we get some more film cards.
I mean, his artwork kind of looks like a romance novel from
You know who Shanks is, right?
Yeah.
The guy who gives
I never
Luffy
saw him like that in the cartoon.
the guy who
It's
gives
like, whatever.
Luffy the straw hat.
The Luffy, yes. He's great friends with the Luffy.
Exactly. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see if we get some more cards for that, because I actually really like Shanks. He's actually one of the most powerful peoples in the show that doesn't have a devil fruit. So this is our final other red leader, which is Zoro. This one actually comes in the booster set, contrary to the starter deck Luffy. His effect, if you have one Dawn under him, all of your characters get 1k power. So kind of a similar like dynamic to what the Luffy does, except this guy, he costs 1 to give everyone 1k, whereas your Luffy can, give someone 1k for free.
Yeah.
And they're the same types and same, access to cards.
I don't know. This seems better than what we just looked at. But you put the Dawn under him, correct?
Mm-hmm. As you put 1 Dawn under him, he becomes 6. Then all of your other guys get a passive +1 during this turn.
Okay. I'd say. I hate saying mid all the time, but I'll say mid.
Yeah, so
it's more of like a standard utility that you could use.
It's as basic as you can get.
Right. But like,
it's trying to do different things than the Luffy.
You're just depending on what you build around him, and it's not like you get late game and you're like, oh, I can't use this anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, so actually, the longer the game goes on, it's actually quite a bit better, because imagine you have a bunch of guys who have 4k power, and then you just put 1 Dawn on your Zoro, and now all of these guys can naturally hit the leader without me allocating any more Dawn.
Right.
And red has quite a few rush cards, so that is nice. This leader is trying to do different things than the Luffy. A lot of people regard this card as, like pretty good. Like, I think that the Luffy is better. It's kind of like an opinion which one is better. But in set 2, people believe that this leader actually becomes quite a bit better, just because there are different cards that benefit you for going even more all out wide. Whereas the Luffy is more, tempo based, where, like I said, you have that additional Dawn to play out a card that you might not be able to use the effect of that card that turn.
Yeah.
This, just benefits you for going wide, giving you that cost reduction late game. The reality is, you said you felt bad about putting so many cards in the mid category. The thing is, the game is extremely balanced right now. So it's very hard to, not think that, because they've done such a good job in making things, so, 50-50, 60-50 matchups, that...
Well, even game design, you're going to have a few cards that are top tier, a few that are bottom tier, and a broad range in the middle. So
yeah, and with the power level of red is very high currently in this limited card pool compared to other colors. So just being in red is viable. I just don't really like this guy, because I personally never seen anyone top with the deck at a treasure cup, whereas Luffy is continuously topped. But this is actually the second highest represented deck at most of the treasure cups, which is crazy to me, when none, if maybe one, makes in the top cut. I don't think I've seen a single person top with the deck, but someone may have topped.
It's easy enough to play. I could probably create a deck around him.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not bad.
Enough to kind of hang in there.
You can win locals. You can go 50-50 with anyone. It's similar to Luffy. It's just I prefer Luffy just because of the way that the card pool is. I like getting that additional Dawn X effect.
Gotcha, yeah.
Now we're going to talk about one of my favorites, Crocodile, the one with the Gar. Check out my most recent video.
Okay, so it looks like 4 life, blue, purple. put you in activate an event. You can draw one card, you have 4 or less in your hand. And you haven't drawn a card using this leader's effect during this turn. Now, okay, event.
First off, I just realized, I don't know why they didn't just say once per turn instead of, and you haven't drawn a card using this leader's effect.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like, wait, that actually just made it more complicated for someone learning.
So if I draw it and I drop it on the ground and it blows away, like I can activate it again?
If the guy chains and he negates my draw, I get to draw again. He spells speed 5.
So I just got the Dawn, man. Just keep it coming.
True. So if you have 1 under him, and you use an event during your turn or your opponent's turn, and you have 4 or less on resolution, you get to draw 1. So let's say the other guy attacked you, and you use an event that gives your guy counter power during that battle. You don't take the damage. Then you had 5 in your hand at the time of activation. Well, now that card's in the trash. You have 4. And you could use this leader ability to draw 1. As well as if you activate an event during your turn that says, activate during main, and then you have 4 or less on resolution, you draw 1.
I don't know. I kind of like this because it seems like it would play a part in like the engine of keeping you in cards.
Mm-hmm.
And draw power is always awesome. No matter what game you're playing, draw power is the god move. So I'll say hi. I'll take a chance on this one.
So this guy is actually like super underplayed. Like I said, like 4-cost leaders are really hard to make work because people are newer to the game. It's like a risk. And this guy, because you have to manage things so appropriately, he's super complicated. I would say he's more complicated than Trafalgar Law. Because you got to make sure you have enough cards in hand to draw during the other guy's turn. And what if he just decides not to attack? You got to account for like how many attacks he might do and how you would do that. And the other thing is you got to be like super defensive. One of the main problems is like in most decks, you want to like take the first or second damage from the damage zones. You could get a card, because you're not going to die if you have 5.
Well, and that's the thing about the 4 life.
Mm-hmm.
You're drawing 1 less card, but his effect in a way
draws you a card.
Mitigates that.
Yeah.
Because you're still able to draw up.
So that's what immediately makes me resonate with this leader, and I love what you're trying to do. It's super complicated. This was the first deck I made. I thought it was like a good deck because you meet Croc early on, and I was really attracted to him since I started the anime, and I thought that it was going to be good. I realized it was just too overwhelming for my first tournament, and I just got clapped. Now, recently I've come back to it with the Starter Deck Film Edition, which introduced new purple cards. This guy, I think, has added like quite a bit more power, and a lot of people have suggested that this guy has the best like chance of being better as time goes on. Because, like, the more cards we get through events, this guy just only becomes better. And that's the thing. Like, right now, you're limited on events. So, if the guy knows what he's doing, he can kind of interpret, like, what you may have.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So that's another thing you got to think about. Because it's like, okay, well, there might be only 3 or 4 real options the guy probably has. If he has a certain amount of Dawn, because events have certain costs.
Yeah,
so that he can telegraph
you can
that.
read in it.
No, I mean I've won with this leader, and I think it's really good. The main problem is because you have to be on the defensive so long to get advantage. Your games go so long, so you have to think really fast and try to go as fast as you can because your games will go into time.
Gotcha.
And that's actually what happened to me. And
so mid or high?
Mid. A lot of people put him like low. He doesn't have any tops. We can say that. He doesn't have any premier tops, but definitely has a lot of potential. It's just people don't want to play him because he's too complicated for like the reward to what you put in with the deck. Like where you could play Doflamingo and you get to do a similar thing. You're getting a free advantage off your leader every turn, but it just requires less skill.
Gotcha. All right.
So then this brings us to our final leader, which is Eustass Captain Kid, the only other green leader, which he comes in the starter deck. He's Supernovas, and he's actually a part of that worst generation that I mentioned before that Trafalgar Law and Luffy are a part of. So, you know, he's kind of one of the newer pirates on the Grand Line.
Okay.
He's actually been a high fan favorite from what I've heard.
So tap 3, trash 1 card from your hand, set this leader as active. What does active mean?
It just means untap.
Okay.
So if you attacked with him, then you could untap him and attack again, and the Dawn that was previously under him will stay. So let's say you put 3 Dawn under him, making him 8. Then afterwards, you paid the cost to tap 3 more Dawn, and then discard a card. Well, now you could attack with 8 again.
Okay. Huh. Yeah, I guess that's useful, but mid, mainly because you're why do I that's just my gut feeling, but let's see. You've got a trash cards from your hand.
He's got a robot arm, man. Come on.
I know, but you know, just sort of lawnmower man. Yeah, I don't know. Just attacking twice with your leader, it feels so bland. Like it's like, yeah, okay. I paid 3, discarded a card to attack twice with my leader. It just doesn't seem like it's all that great. Like, I might even go low. I'll go low. Screw it.
Is that your final answer?
That's final answer, low.
Okay, so this is actually currently the best deck in the game,
Oh,
and a
damn
lot
it.
of people consider it like tier 0. At the most recent Treasure Cup, I think like 8 out of 16 people in the top 16 were won out with this deck. And also, the main thing that's carrying it, I didn't want to mention this previously in the video, was, you know, some of the remarks I made on like Kazuki Oden is that green is actually probably the most powerful color. So this guy has access to the highest quality cards in the game. And also, that's why Trafalgar Law is partially so strong, because he gets to access green and red, which are, you know, the 2 most supported colors in the game.
Okay. Yeah.
Like this guy, he gets to use that 5-cost Trafalgar Law as well, which, you know, we noted is a really strong card. And you got to think, this leader just creates a lot of mind game situation for the other guy, because let's say I attack with him for 7 and I have 10 Dawn on your guy, and you're like, okay, well, I can discard 2 cards, save this guy, and he's really important. But then he could, if I do that, he could just discard 1, and then I won't be able to protect it again, and I just negged and my card died.
Gotcha. Okay.
A
lot of counterattack.
And another thing is, this guy's, honestly, it's just, even though it's basic, it's really busted, in my opinion, because you get into a lot of situations where if you're the opponent, you really can't be at 1 life, because this guy at 10 Dawn, let's say you have no blockers, well then you could put 7 Dawn on him, he now becomes 12k power. And you could swing 2 times at your opponent for 12k.
Dang. Okay.
Which means that, you know, he's got to discard 7, 9, 11, 13. He's got to discard 4 2Ks in hand to even do that. And a lot of decks play like 8 to 12 2Ks.
Okay. Yeah.
So, like, that's really broken, especially versus Kaido. You know, because you're trying to race down the Kaido. So he's probably at low health. And then...
I could, yeah. Okay, yeah. I could see it being kind of like a chip damage. You just chip away.
It's just always a threat. And also, this guy, he just has access to some of the most, like, broken cards in the game. Like, it's really the only color where you can tap stuff consistently on the other guy's field and then just attack it. So, like, there's a lot of cards that say, like, on play, tap your opponent's guy that's, like, 3 or less or 4 or less. And then you're like, okay, tap your guy. Okay, I'm going to attack with my leader. Well, the other guy didn't account for that. So now he basically has to let it die, because you could just untap your leader and attack it again.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's just like a confirmed kill. It's like the ultimate, like, control strategy. And when you think about it, the later in the game that you get in a vacuum, this ability is just broken in a top deck situation. Because let's say you draw a card and I draw a card, we're both at 1, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'll just attack you for 2 times for 12.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Like, there's just no defense to that. So that guy's really strong. He actually has access to 2 cards that allow you to tap them for infinite value for a searcher. Like, you can just rest it, and then you get to look at the top 5, add 1, and then you could bounce those back to hand.
Gotcha.
And no other color has access to that, by the way. In my opinion, fundamentally broken.
That's crazy. Okay.
Like, because it's also best of one. So you got to think the consistency level this guy has compared to other people is insane because he has 2 infinite value searchers. Whereas, like in red, the only searcher you have is Nami, which is just on play.
Yeah, yeah.
And you can't bounce that back to hand unless you're playing the Trafalgar Law leader.
Okay.
So that guy, he just gets infinite value, and it's really broken. All right, guys, so that's going to be all of the leaders for set 1. Let me know down in the comments how you think he did overall. And if you want to see more content like this, be sure to let us know. Smash the like button and hit subscribe. As always, if it's not the goo, it's got to go. Peace.
Ooh, is that indigo?